This week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Gene Morrison of Intertech about the challenges and opportunities facing suppliers in the aerospace industry. That and more when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is brought to you by Mitutoyo America. Whatever your metrology challenges, Mitutoyo supports you from start to finish.
And welcome back one and all to Quality Digest Live for November 10th, 2017. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest. My co-host Dirk Ducharme is on assignment at Disneyland. Well, actually, he's on vacation at Disneyland, so say hi to Mickey for me, Dirk. I know you're watching. All right, well, we're going to start the show this week, actually in Southern California, believe it or not, with a news item from the University of Southern California, USC. What really causes workplace stress? USC study aims at a more productive society is the full name of this piece, which appeared last month on USC News. We republished the article from their blog in the Tuesday issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. The study in question is being organized at USC's Viterbi School of Engineering's Information Sciences Institute in collaboration with Keck Medicine at USC and the USC Dornsife College of Letters, Arts, and Sciences. The multidisciplinary team conducting the research is led by Srikanth Narayan, a research director and professor of electrical engineering at the Information Sciences Institute. One of the interesting things about Narayan is that although he teaches electrical engineering, he's an electrical engineer, his primary field of study is actually using technology to study human behavior. Very interesting. Now that talent is going to come into use because Narayan and his team are studying 250 nurses from Keck Medicine, which is a USC medical school and the USC hospital, to determine how stress affects their work performance. Using a combination of sensors, cognitive assessments, and daily surveys, researchers will track metrics such as quality of sleep, self-assessed work performance, and social interactions. Of course, nurses, as we all know, have a high-stress job, often requiring 12-hour shifts. So this 10-week study is going to provide some really good insight into how stress and other factors affect people that are on the job. Using this data, says Narayan, we can see how your body actually responds to stressors in the environment. And the team hopes to eventually accumulate psychological insights that could justify the implementation of positive workplace interventions that could lower stress and boost employee well-being and morale overall. This project showcases what USC Viterbi Dean Yanis Yorsos calls, quote, engineering plus, which is defined as the power of engineering to advance other disciplines. And I would say that this survey, and especially Narayan's leadership of it, is really an excellent example of that very principle in action. As we know, I mean, engineering really underpins everything in the modern world of ours. And I think that this very study, the survey that they're doing over at USC, really shows how engineers and engineering principles can help to unveil or reveal some of the human factors that go into work, and in this case, stress in the workplace. So really good, really important work there being done by the team at USC and Narayan and his team. Okay, well, I'm going to turn to our first feature article of the day, of the show here. The aerospace industry. As we know, it can be an extremely lucrative industry sector for manufacturers, suppliers, and service providers. But like most things in life and business, those opportunities for great success are matched by some major challenges. So to get a sense for what kinds of opportunities and challenges we're talking about here, think about the fact that the average aircraft has anywhere from 1.2 million to 3 million components. And that means suppliers, lots of suppliers, are involved in the assembly, manufacture, and servicing of even a small airplane. Many are called to the sector due to the potential profit margins, makes sense, but only the best suppliers can achieve long-lasting success. And the key really is adherence to standards, in this case, AS9100, the quality management system standard that's specific to aerospace. AS9100 is not optional, very important to note, not optional for those wanting to become a supplier within aerospace. But the good news is that AS9100 uses ISO 9001 as its base, so those that are registered to the latter are already well on their way to achieving certification to the former. Of course, the devil, as always, is in the details, and to help us better understand the challenges and opportunities found in the aerospace industry, as well as the way that AS9100 helps suppliers really take off, we're going to be talking to Gene Morrison of Intertek. He's Intertek's Global Aviation, Space, and Defense Program Manager. He's also an AS9100 lead auditor. And we actually have a webinar with Gene coming up next week on Thursday, the 16th of November. You can see Gene's article there that he wrote for us, Aerospace Faces Challenges as Market Rapidly Expands. We have Gene on Skype, or we had Gene on via Skype, but I think we actually lost him, we dropped him. That happens sometimes, it's a live show, but we'll get Gene back. But meanwhile, I'll tell you a little bit more about the webinar that we're doing next week, and maybe Christopher can flash up the slide that has wherever there is. And again, this is next week. This is Thursday, November 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. It's a live webinar, as we say there, elevating into the aviation, space, and defense industry. Gene Morrison of Intertek is going to be presenting. Dirk's going to be hosting, and we'll be presenting that webinar to you on Thursday. Some of you have already registered for that webinar. If you haven't, get on it, because it's going to be a good one. We certainly want you to check that one out and learn more about AS9100. So yeah, we're going to try to get Gene back, but in the meantime, I'll tell you a little bit about this industry that we're talking about here, AS9100 and aerospace. I mean, as we say, it's a complicated thing. I mean, if you are ISO 9001 registered, certified already, and you want to play in the space, you've got to get to be AS9100 registered, certified. And that's where a company like Intertek comes in. And that's what the webinar is going to really be about, is talking about suppliers and the supply chain and what you can do if you are a supplier and you're interested in coming into the industry. Of course, as we say, very profitable. The opportunities are great. The challenges are high too, though, because really you need to be, again, AS9100 registered in order to get into the space. So if you're not, you're kind of stuck. You need to make sure that you work with a company, get registered, and go from there. I think we do now have Gene back. Gene, are you there with us?
Yes, I sure am. I'm very happy to be on the show. And I'm not in Disneyland.
That's good to know. You're in Illinois, I believe.
Yes.
Well, thanks, Gene. Thanks for bailing me out there. I was tap dancing a little bit, not an expert myself, of course. So maybe you can help us a little bit. You can start with the basics. So why is AS9100 an imperative for aerospace suppliers? In addition to being, of course, a requirement for doing business, how does it help companies compete?
Okay, very good. That's two questions. And let me start with, certainly because of the industry we're in, it's unlike any other industry, aviation, space, and defense, and the catastrophic consequences that can happen with our products and services if we don't do it right and we don't get it right the first time. A little bit of background, the International Aerospace Quality Group, that's the group of OEMs that oversee the scheme and oversee the systems. It governs anything we do within AS. It covers all the stakeholders, accreditation bodies, certification bodies like Intertek, and auditors, as well as companies that are registered to AS9100. The key goal of the IAQG is to improve the supply chain at every level, at all levels within the supply chain. And that is why it must have a series of standards like AS that make sure everybody is meeting the same requirements. It's independently audited, and there's an objective look for all the companies to make sure that everybody's following the requirements. The AS standard helps businesses compete because it puts companies in a position and a level playing field with all the other AS suppliers. In addition, it provides a consistent approach to satisfying the business needs and customer requirements while continually improving their businesses. In addition, it improves the focus on the suppliers. Since that's the main focus of the standard, improving the supply chain at all levels, the companies that supply directly to the industry must also control their suppliers to the same level. It helps businesses establish a more robust business management system. It helps them identify best practices across the industry, and we make our clients aware of those as we do our audits. In addition, it positions the organization to expand into a multi-billion-dollar global industry, reduces the business overall risk, and we focus on cost, schedule, and performance. So we work hard to make sure we improve their business systems. In addition, they get more customers. They can tap into the $674 billion aviation and defense industry, and of that, $350 billion is in the space industry. It just heard that the U.S. Senate recently approved $826 billion defense budget for 2018. So you can see the kind of opportunity that getting into this business offers our clients.
Yeah, 2/3, if I can spool that back and just point that out, 2/3 of $1 trillion, $673 billion, I think you said, in this industry. That's a big opportunity for.
It's
for
very big. It's very big.
And as I say, it's growing fast, and a lot of that's due to new players coming in the field. For example, I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about how the advent of private space exploration has really changed the scope and scale of the sector.
Yes, I sure can. I tell you, the space industry, or NASA's budget last year was $19.6 billion. They're finalizing the 18 budget now, and we hear that it's going to be cut $1 billion. So the government spend on the space program is going to be reduced. But the good news is the commercial space industry is expected to spend $350 billion on their development efforts. NASA then will become more of a oversight role and obviously use all those commercial businesses to do their job in the future.
Amazing. I mean, the numbers you're talking about there are just really mind-boggling. And I mentioned in the run-up to the article that you wrote an article for us, and that you mentioned that ISO 9001 registered companies really aren't that far off from achieving AS 9100 certifications as well. But then you write, this is interesting, if it's so easy, why isn't every company certified to AS 9100? Which is a good question. So what's the answer?
Thanks, Mike. Well, I'll tell you, currently ISO 9001 companies, if they're certified to 9001 2015, the new version, they're approximately 75% there. That 25% in addition is challenging to some purely commercial businesses. As I mentioned previously, there are so many requirements in that 25% that will help a business improve their QMS as well as reduce risks and increase efficiency over time. The difficulty for non-industry organizations lies in properly positioning themselves for what comes next. What comes after the upgrade? What do we do next? Entering an unfamiliar market without a broad understanding of the industry can be a challenge for businesses who want to make that transition. At the same time, the return on investment and profit margin, the potential is huge. Most manufacturers already have the machines, the materials, and the processes to adjust their assembly lines, but they require a knowledgeable network that can help them map the landscape of the industry and enable their success. Intertech can provide those tailored services to help these organizations transition successfully.
And we're doing a webinar on this topic next week, as I teased, and you're going to talk about really the entry modes for suppliers into aerospace. I don't want to steal your thunder from next Thursday because we're all looking forward to that, but maybe you can give us a little sneak preview of your presentation and explain a little bit about how the entry occurs and what it may mean for original equipment manufacturers as well as the suppliers themselves.
Sure can, Mike. Certainly, we're excited to present a roadmap for any ISO certified company to position themselves to become a top quality aviation, space, and defense supplier. Some of the topics of the webinar will doing next week include benefits of upgrading to AS9100G and the return on investment that they might realize from this upgrade. We'll talk about the AS, aviation, space, and defense industry, the market in general, and what the potential and opportunities are. We'll talk about incentives for upgrading from ISO 9001 to AS9100. We'll talk about our Intertech aerospace program currently. We have approximately 500 clients and sites certified around the globe. And we want to introduce some of those clients and let them know what our process includes currently for aviation, space, and defense. We'll also talk about the key differences between ISO 9000 and AS 91000. And we'll do that in sufficient detail so that that information can be used as a roadmap to them as they're moving forward to transition to AS 9100. Additionally, we'll talk about some added Intertech services that might help them be more successful in their transition. And then certainly we'll talk about the upgrade and transition process and the steps that it will take. And then certainly we'll identify points of contact, including questions and experts in the industry that might help them along.
Wow, that's great, Gene. That's an ambitious agenda. I would certainly encourage everyone out there to check that out. Again, the webinar is called Elevating into the Aviation, Space, and Defense Industry. The event occurs, this webinar, on Thursday, November 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Gene, right there, is going to be your presenter, and Dirk's going to return to host. So keep an eye on your email inbox for more information, invitation, or you can click on the link in Gene's article just below the video player screen right down there, and you can register there. Gene, thanks again for joining us. We're going to see you on Thursday.
Thank you, Mike. I look forward to it.
Have a good weekend. We'll see you then. And yeah, as I mentioned, you can see, kind of get a flavor for it right from there. Gene's got a lot of information about the standard, about what it takes to kind of use what you're already doing with ISO 9001 and transition into that industry. It's a really interesting industry full of a lot of opportunity for those that may want to come in as a supplier. Alrighty, well, our next article has the humorously self-descriptive title, Gluten-Free Water Shows Absurdity of Trend in Labeling What's Absent. It was penned by Brandon McFadden. He's a professor of food and resource economics at the University of Florida, and the piece appeared in Wednesday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. And absurdity, I think, is the right term, because in this article, McFadden uses the example of a company selling so-called premium water. Their premium water is organic, it's kosher, and it's free of GMOs, as well as the aforementioned gluten. Now, of course, anyone with any critical thinking skills at all would quickly realize that all water is free of gluten and GMOs, and that designating it as organic and or kosher does absolutely nothing to alter said water in any way. Yet, this company, I won't mention it, he does mention it in his article, this company is allowed by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to label their water as such, and I guess customers are free to pay an extra $1 or $2 a liter for the meaningless assurance that such labeling offers. I mean, heck, it's better than drinking free tap water after all, right? Which is just so hoi polloi. All kidding aside, McFadden is onto something here, and it's an issue that has, I think, real repercussions for customers who are trying to pick their way through the various descriptions that food manufacturers use on their labels. And you know, some of this language, quite frankly, is meaningful. It is. For example, the term organic is strictly regulated, and whether or not you actually believe that organic food is healthier, you can rest assured that something that's labeled as organic actually is, and that label means something tangible about the way that such food is grown, raised, cultured, and brought to your table. Unless it's water, of course. Be that as it may. On the other hand, the word natural means essentially nothing. I mean, there's no standard, no regulation governing it. Anyone can sell anything natural, quote unquote, and sell it to the public. So natural doesn't really mean anything. Now, McFadden is a food scientist, but think about what all this means for consumers who aren't professionals in the field. Although there really isn't much risk of anyone getting sick by these label games. I mean, after all food is closely monitored by the FDA to make sure that it's safe as possible. regardless of what the label says. So the FDA is protecting your food supply, whether it's labeled as organic or natural or whatever the heck it is. Now, this kind of thing can certainly cause worried people to shell out more money for food that they think is better in some way. I mean, genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, are another example. Food scientists like McFadden will tell you that there's really no difference between GMO and non-GMO foods, yet many argue that GMOs are dangerous in some way. Thus, as McFadden mentions, there's a new labeling law going into effect late next year that's going to mandate that certain foods containing GMOs must be identified on their label. Now, what is that going to do to the sale of those foods? Well, I mean, one would think that they would probably decline, right? I mean, people are going to see GMO on the label. They're going to say, oh my God, that's frankenfood. It's bad. It's not as healthy as non-GMO food. So perhaps their sales are going to decline, and perhaps the price of such foods will then go down as well. And those of us who understand the inherently safe nature of GMO food are going to get a bargain to offset the high price of gluten-free water. Well, one may hope at least. Now, all this falls into the realm of what's known as asymmetric information, which is something that used car salespeople understand all too well. It simply means that one party in a sale, usually the seller, of course, logically, knows more about the product than the other party, usually the buyer. Okay, caveat emptor, one may respond, and that's okay, that's fine, until you're the one who drives off the lot with a slick-looking late model Ford F-150 that actually has a salvage title and a rolled back odometer. You don't want to be that guy. So let the buyer beware is generally good advice, but only if that buyer has at least a fair chance to understand what he or she is actually buying. Sadly, I think food labeling, which began in the 1970s to clarify what's in the stuff we eat, has mutated into just another marketing scheme to obfuscate the truth behind the label. And I think it's a sad state of affairs, but like anything and everything in this increasingly convoluted, complex, and confusing little world of ours, some research and critical thinking can do wonders to help you really understand the true quality or lack thereof in your food choices. And that's really the takeaway for any of this, is to do your own research and learn a little bit about what the reality of food choices are. I mean, you can say that you believe that GMO foods are unhealthful and you don't want to buy GMO foods. That's your right, of course. But I mean, if we're going to insist that's mandated by the government, we should try to understand a little bit more about what the science behind it really is. And we have to trust science. I mean, there's certainly a movement afoot to not trust science these days in a lot of parts of the society. I think it's dangerous. So do your own research, trust scientists that have been in the field for many years and make your decisions for yourself based on your own critical thinking skills. All right, well, we have time for one last segment on the show, and this is going to be our off script. For those of you that watch the show often, what we do in off script is Dirk or I, usually when Dirk is here, we'll share a little story or a game, or we'll throw something at each other that the other one doesn't expect, and we'll get some kind of unvarnished reactions to what it is. So since Dirk's not here, I invited Jeff Dewar. Jeff is our CEO, Quality Digest CEO. He's up in Seattle. So I invited Jeff to join us via Skype to come on the show and play our little off-script game with us this week. So Jeff, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. Thanks for doing this, Jeff. I think you're going to appreciate this one. I think you're going to have a good time with it because, we know you. I know you pretty well. You're a visual guy. You are
Yep.
one that always is interested in what the graphics say, what they don't say, making sure that those things make some sense. So to help us with this week's off-script segment, I'm going to show you a couple of images, and I'm going to get your hot take on what they mean to you. Okay? You haven't seen these images, so you don't know what I'm going to throw at you, but I want you to look at these images. I think there's 4 of them. So I want you to look at them one at a time, and I want you to tell me what these images say to you in real time. So you ready? You ready to go?
Okay, I'm making my screen bigger here.
Okay. All right, Chris, let's share image 1 with Jeff. Can you see that one, Jeff?
I can.
Okay. What are you when you look at that, what does that say to you?
It sends a mixed message of this is a pedestrian walkway, but stop and don't walk here.
Okay.
Partly because the green seems to almost have a sort of a representative of a circle with a slash through it, through the pedestrian.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the red tape there that says stop and look both ways.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what I saw with this is I saw red, yellow, and green. So those color cues are ones that say, well, should I stop? Should I go? Should I hesitate? I mean, it's like everything all at once. But this is a typical kind of setup. You'll see a lot of tape, obviously.
You only know what it actually is by the writing on the yellow.
Right, exactly. Without that, though, you don't know. You see this, obviously, I'm sure a lot of our users see this in their factories all over. This is very common to have taped areas like this with some instructions that maybe aren't so clear sometimes. All right, well, let's look at image number 2. This is a fun one. I don't even know what this one means. What does this one mean to you?
So this looks like a car being made in a robotic factory.
Yeah.
Maybe almost like a time lapse kind of thing.
I think so. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of robots in there, man. I mean, but there's no humans. I don't see a human being anywhere in that whole area.
Well, that is the future of smart manufacturing, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, increasingly, I know we understand that these robots are kind of being unleashed a little bit, so that they're not in their little cages anymore. They're being programmed to not kill human beings, but maybe that is the future. Maybe you're not going to have any humans anywhere in the manufacturing process.
Well,
hopefully not.
I mean, we've covered some of this in the digest before. So, I mean, these robots, there's very, very little time when there's nothing happening. I mean, when these things roll through, I mean, once one robot is finished with a particular action, the next arm or leg or tool or whatever, it's right there. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, they roll into position so that when the step is finished, that it's already right there within a couple of centimeters to go buzz, and then finish off that little task.
And you're right, a couple of centimeters. That's really the tolerance. It's amazing how precise these things are and can be programmed. All right, well, let's look at image number 3. This one's out of the factory. This is now on the road. So what do you see here, Jeff?
I think I've seen that somewhere before.
I mean, if you came upon this, what would you think?
Well, it looks like it's Photoshop for one thing, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was real. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Okay, so it's the wrong way to go, straight forward.
Right.
It's a one-way street, so you can the two little slashed signs in the top left make a lot of sense with regard to that. But I mean, just talk about overkill, and then talking about the top right there. Besides that, you got to look for people running across the street in a crosswalk. There's no skateboarding. What's the blue one say? Can you even read that?
I can't even read that. It's just more information that the driver would be paralyzed by, I think. I don't know if this is photoshopped or not. I kind of struggle with that one. I think it may not be. I think this may be real. The shadow in the back looks like it's actually real.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But I mean, even if it had half that amount of information, it's still way, way over the top.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there were several of these. We've all seen these little street scenes where we have these crazy signs. All right, let's look at the 4th one. This is one more in the boardroom, the business room. Now, we've all seen this. I think I have a board in my office that's kind of similar to that. But that's how it goes, right? I mean, that one's definitely not Photoshop. That's definitely reality, I think.
Oh, sure. You can imagine having a team, talking about lean, and they at their daily accountability meetings, trying to use something like this. Yeah.
Well, I think there might be some Kanban underneath there somewhere. Maybe it was originally supposed to be a Kanban board, but boy, I mean, there's photos, there's charts, I can't even tell what's all there. There's notes, there's all sorts of junk.
But, this just speaks to the issue of entropy. I mean, it's a corollary of the second law of thermodynamics. All systems left to themselves tend to decay. And so you can have these visual management systems and you start piling Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids let's just park. You could take your parking lot and say, well, we're not going to get to that. Let's put that in the parking lot. And then that gets up there. And then pretty soon it's just a mishmash without a regular, rigid, discipline to really keep the whole thing focused on what its original purpose is.
That's right. And Jeff, it all comes down to visuality, man. I mean, you have been one of the big proponents in my career about that is make it visual, make it so that people can see the work and see the work flow. And it's good. It's good to be reminded of that. These funny little images, I think, kind of underscore that in people's work lives.
Yeah, I've always liked what our colleague Gwen Galsworth says. She says, "Let the workplace speak to your eyes."
That is great, Jeff. Well, Jeff, thanks for joining us. That's Jeff Dewar, our CEO, playing our off-script game. We'll bring you back, Jeff. We'll do another one of those. It was fun doing that with you today, so thanks.
Sounds good, Mike.
All right.
All right, talk to you later.
We'll see you, Jeff. Bye. All right, well, that is our show for the week. Before we go, we want to thank this week's sponsor. Mitutoyo Corporation is the world's largest provider of measurement and inspection solutions, offering the most complete selection of machines, sensors, systems, and services, with a line encompassing CMMs, vision, form, and finish measuring machines, as well as precision tools and instruments, and metrology data management software. Mitutoyo's nationwide network of metrology centers and support operations provides application, calibration, service repair, and educational programs to ensure that their more than 6,000 metrology products will deliver measurement solutions for their customers. For more information, visit mitutoyo.com or click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player screen. Well, I want to thank QD CEO Jeff Dewar right there a couple moments ago for helping me with our off-script segment on today's show. And let's not forget Gene Morrison of Intertech, who joined us via Skype to talk about the aerospace sector, which also serves as a reminder that Quality Digest and Intertech are presenting a webinar called Elevating into Aviation, Space, and Defense Industry. You can see it right there. The webinar happens next week on Thursday, November 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Gene is presenting, and Dirk will return from hanging with Mr. Mouse to be your host. So keep an eye on your email inbox for your invitation and register for the event if you haven't already. Well, that's our show. Thanks again to all of you for joining us. You all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.